Oh, there she is. Look at the camera. Look at the camera. Hot to crazy ratio, off the charts though. Beautiful, but a little bit insane. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Nicole Vignola Show. It's me, Nick, your pocket neuroscientist, your sweetheart of self-development. Today we're going to be talking about ADHD, and I'm going to give you some neuroscience-backed hacks on how you can improve in areas of your life. I'm not going to bang on about productivity because I don't think that that's everybody's goal when it comes to ADHD, but hopefully some of these tips can help you just overcome some of the challenges that you face in your day-to-day life. As always, science first, and then the practical tips that you can apply to your life. So I want to begin by saying that, interestingly enough, when I went on the APA this morning, which is the American Psychiatric Association, I'm going to read you what they actually wrote. So ADHD is considered a chronic and debilitating disorder and is known to impact the individual in many aspects of their life, including academic and professional achievements, interpersonal relationships, and daily functioning. Now, that has been referenced from a paper from 2005, which is 20 years ago. The NHS still characterizes ADHD as a neurodevelopmental disorder. Now, my neurodivergent friends, I have a theory, and that is that nature is deliberate. I believe that perhaps you were placed on this earth to show us a different way of living. If you really think about it, the 9-to-5 model, the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. model that we send kids to in schools, is that conducive to a life that's worth fully living? I mean, it's a bit strange if you ask me, but perhaps you were placed on this earth to show us that maybe we're meant to be more creative, maybe we were meant to live a bit more freely, maybe we were not supposed to live in these type of systems. I'm going to read you a post that I'm going to personally post on Instagram. It's something that I wrote. It's something that I'm doing a lot more lately, is that I'm journaling. And I wrote, "This is an open letter to all of my neurodivergent friends and followers. To my neurodivergent friends, nature is deliberate, it does not make mistakes. Therefore, you are not a mistake. You were put on this earth to be an agent of change, a catalyst to remind us to question the boundaries of our conformity. You serve a role in inspiring collective change in our conventional and habitual thinking. You have a meaning for humanity, and I apologize for your frustration and the resistance that you receive from society. It won't be in vain because you are an instigator for growth. You will challenge the status quo and help us question the patterns and paradigms that no longer serve us to forge new ways of living and thinking. You are not disordered. Stand tall in your differences because the world needs you." I hope that resonates with you, because I truly believe that whenever I talk to my neurospicy friends or I look at the sort of neurodivergent models, I always think that perhaps you guys are living in the year 3000 and it's just us that needs to catch up. Perhaps. With that being said, I do know that there are lots of people that need help on how to tackle some of the issues that arise in your daily lives when it comes to living with ADHD. And so, as always, like I said, science first. I'm going to help you understand some of the things that are going on in your brain. I'm also going to help destigmatize some of the common misconceptions that accompany the topic of ADHD. So the first thing I want to talk about is attentional blinks. So everybody has these attentional blinks. They are essentially a phenomenon that when you find something, a piece of information, if you were to look for another piece of information shortly after, you would not be able to see it. Bear with me. So if you were to be presented with two stimuli in succession, typically within a time frame of 200 to 500 milliseconds, you would not be able to see the second stimuli because your brain needs to replenish resources while it is paying attention to the current stimulus. Bear with me. This is really important for ADHD. But basically what I want to bring attention to is that this phenomenon highlights the defaults or the faults in our attentional network as a whole, neurodivergent or neurotypical, particularly with how we process information over a period of time. The idea is that when our attentional system is paying attention to something in the moment, it cannot focus on something else. And we know that because we can't really multitask. So if you try and text your friend whilst also watching a show, you're going to miss the relevant information from the TV, or vice versa. If you're paying attention to the TV, you might make mistakes while you're typing. I might have to get you out of here, girl. So what this means is that when we look at this in the research settings, we administer a T1, which is a stimulus, and then a T2 in succession to participants that are in the study. And what we see is that when the T2, so the second stimulus, is presented within this time frame, there is an inability for the person to be able to detect it. They've done a variety of research experiments on this. So one of them, for example, is when they show different letters coming up on the screen. You might get the letter Z and then the letter R, and you might ask somebody to look for both the letters, but when they are presented in succession within those time frames, they can detect the first one but not the second one, and they miss the second one every single time. That brief period between finding the one and then needing to find a second one is an attentional blink. So that's where your attentional system essentially switches off and you are unable to detect the second stimuli. This also happens because the brain essentially needs to encode the information from the first stimuli. So it requires that amount of time, 200 to 500 milliseconds, to be able to do that before the attentional network can then move on to something else. And why is this important? It is important because the literature does point towards the fact that individuals with ADHD have longer attentional blinks. So what tends to happen is an individual with ADHD might be focusing on something else and therefore is unable to focus on something else, which can manifest itself in the inability to hold sustained attention on a particular task for a prolonged period of time. This also manifests itself in individuals with ADHD with the inability to process multiple stimuli at once. And I think if you speak to any neurodivergent friend, you will know that they get overstimulated by too many things happening at once, and it is because of these attentional blinks that are exerting force on the attentional system whilst having a longer space of time in which it can actually process and encode this information in the brain. What this also can manifest itself in is that if there are competing stimuli, that the individual with ADHD might suffer or struggle to shift attention to something that is more relevant and important because of these attentional blinks. So you may attach more salience to a piece of stimuli that is not particularly important, like maybe someone talking in the background, and for you to shift your attention to something that is relevant, like the task at hand or perhaps your friend, may bring on some challenges. Now, the conclusion that I want to come to when it comes to these attentional blinks, and the reason I'm trying to explain it is because I'm trying to validate your experiences. I want you to see that the reason why you struggle with competing stimuli, or maybe you need to be single-handedly focused on one thing, or perhaps you struggle to think about multiple things at once, is because of this attentional system and these attentional blinks, this phenomenon called the attentional blinks. And the reason I'm explaining this is because if you would like to try and adopt some of these changes to improve this attentional network, then we have seen through the literature that this part of the brain is extremely plastic, even in individuals with ADHD. And I will give you the tips at the end, and I will show you that it has been science-backed that the frontal cortex can reshape itself to improve some of these areas of your life if you wish to. I wrote it in Rewire, and I wrote that anyone that's neurodivergent and is looking to make a change should inquire and instill this change based on you wanting to do that, to try and improve yourself, not to try and fit into a neurotypical society that is requiring you to do so. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is hyper-fixation. So there's a common misconception that individuals with ADHD, predominantly adults, in children, it is a little bit different because the frontal cortex has not quite developed yet, but in older individuals, hyperfixation is one of the underpinnings of ADHD. People think that individuals with ADHD have scatter minds and are unable to focus on anything, but I think you can see from the attentional blink and what I'm about to talk to you about now, which is the hyperfixation, is that actually individuals attach more salience to the things that they really, really, really care about and tend to overlook the things that don't really bring reward. Things like brushing your teeth, things like the mundane chores that you're supposed to do to keep your house clean, the things that maybe your boss is asking you to do at work but you can't be bothered to do because you'd much rather be doing the things that you enjoy. And it is the reason why individuals with ADHD, and I have clients that I work with who have ADHD, who sometimes forget to eat, who forget to drink water because they are so fixated on the thing that they're doing, which may be studying or which may be learning a skill. And I think that that's a really important point to make, because this hyperfixation means that you tend to overlook, coupled with the attentional blink, you tend to overlook the mundane parts of life, the things that you're supposed to be doing but don't want to do. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the H in ADHD. Yes, it has got to do with the hyperactivity of children that can't sit still, but we are actually, as neuroscientists, shifting away from that model of thinking and adopting the ideology that the hyperactivity may have to do with the hyperactivity in the networks of the brain, which I'm now going to explain. And if you've been listening to me for a long time, you know that I'm always talking about the three major networks of your brain. So, network number one is your default mode network, responsible for internal mind wandering, pondering life, autobiographical memories, autonoetic consciousness. It's a really big word. But humans are the only species that we know of that are able to ponder life and place themselves in different timelines, whereas animals don't really have that. So when you leave the house, your dog will miss you because he's got short-term memory. But if you were to go away for a long week, he's not pondering that time that you guys were in the park together, but through association and through recollection memory, he will think about you. So if he goes to the park, he knows the park through association, he knows the park through recollection, and he recognizes it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he's lying at home wishing that he was there. With ADHD, that default mode network that is responsible for self-referential information may be overactive or inappropriately active during a task that requires focus. So it's switching on at the wrong times. So you're supposed to be doing your report, but instead you're actually daydreaming or pondering life or thinking about what you should be doing next or thinking about your crush. Always fun to think about your crush, but sometimes we do need to get the work done instead. This can also manifest itself in you wandering off mid-conversation when you should be paying attention to your boss and what they're saying, but instead you're thinking about that ramen you're going to have for dinner. The second network is the Central Executive Network. This one is responsible for outward thinking. So default mode network, or DMN, internal mind wandering. CEN is goal-directed behaviors. So working on a task, higher order thinking, problem solving, etc. All these weird and wonderful things that are required for us to actually live a life that has a happy balance. And then the last network is the salience network. Salience means importance. So right now, hopefully, you are paying attention to me. If there were to be a loud bang outside your window or someone calls your name, the salience network will divert your attention to the thing that has more salience. And what it also does is it attaches salience to either network. So it will say, okay, we need to task switch from CEN to DMN because we're now going to think about something, and then we need to switch back to CEN type thinking. So under normal conditions, the CEN and the DMN don't overlap and they switch on and off rather efficiently. And that's not true for everyone. Even neurotypicals may suffer with this. But what we have seen in the literature with ADHD is that there is a time delay in when these networks are supposed to be on or off. And so sometimes what the salience network does is it attaches salience to the wrong network, or there is also a time delay or a dysregulation in how these two networks switch on and off. And so we're also stepping away from the idea that ADHD is can't focus and that ADHD is predominantly an attentional issue. It's got more to do with how these networks task switch and shift between the two. There needs to be a happy balance and they need to be done efficiently. It's just that sometimes with ADHDers, there tends to be a time delay. So you are pondering a 9-year-old life when you're engaging in conversation with your friend and you start to suddenly drift off. I hope that validates your experiences, because when I started to delve into the neuroscience research of ADHD, it all starts to make so much sense to me. And I think that it's really important to discuss these topics because it takes away that stigma of people with ADHD being incompetent or unable to focus or unable to get their lives together. I've worked with many clients with ADHD who all see a huge shift in their lives when they change their mindset around what ADHD is. And I think we have created a particular story around what ADHD is. And once you start to understand it, you start to alleviate that pressure from your shoulders. So without further ado, I have got 8 hacks on how to improve your life if you have ADHD. Number 1 is your mindset. So changing your mindset around what ADHD is. And I hope that this first section of the video has helped you see that it is not a debilitating disorder like the APA has characterized it at, like the NHS has spoken about it. It is in fact just a difference, a neurodivergence in how your brain works, and you can use it in your favor. And step number 2 is the 5-minute rule. You put on a 5-minute timer and you just do anything that you can in those 5 minutes. I know that you're probably thinking, I can't get loads done in 5 minutes, but the idea of the 5-minute rule is to help you overcome that resistance that comes with starting a task. Because generally speaking, the issue comes with even just beginning. It's not necessarily sustaining the attention. Yes, that has a whole sort of caveat to itself, but it's got to do with the resistance that comes with generating enough motivation and enough activity in your brain to be able to shift you into a state of, okay, let's just get this done. So the 5-minute rule is great because it removes the emphasis on all the things that you're supposed to do, and you're saying to yourself, just get started. Like Nike said it, just do it. Number 3 is to gamify your tasks. I work with a lot of clients who will list the rewards that they want to treat themselves with throughout the day. So they choose them. They range all the way from chocolate to playing with a dog to going for a walk to painting to scrolling social media. And the social media one, we normally attach to the tasks that are more difficult. So we're saying, okay, if you can finish this task that has been on your mind for so long, then you can scroll social media for X amount of time. And everyone's reward and everyone's task will require a nuanced perspective. So I encourage you to work on that yourself. You can always drop it in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to try and help you. But I find that that's a really effective way of being able to do the things that you should be doing. Hack number 4 is strategic alarms for time awareness. I have many clients that will forget to eat, that will forget to hydrate, that will forget to go and pick up their kids from school. Yes, I've had that before. And so you can plan your whole day with alarms. So one goes off at 12:15 that says lunch. One goes at 3 o'clock that says go pick up your kids from school. I'm giggling, but I'm not laughing at you. But it's true. It's true. And it happens, and I think we should normalize it. And then maybe you have an alarm on for 7 that's like, pay attention to your partner. Number 5 is to put your distractions out of sight, out of mind. There is so much research that suggests that if you have your phone placed on the table whilst you're trying to do work, your brain, subconscious brain, is constantly communicating with the idea that it could pick this phone up at any point, because our brain works through cues, triggers, rewards. Cue, response, reward, or cue, trigger, reward. It doesn't really matter the way you word it, it's the same thing. And what that means is that cue that says, pick me up, I'm right here, is consistently there. And you want to remove that because it's called an attentional capture. The thing in the room that is the most attentional grabbing is going to shift your attention to that thing every single time. If you were trying to do some work in a cafe and there was someone singing and dancing like a crazy person, your brain is going to work very hard at trying to block that person out. It is even worse with your phone in the room because your brain is saying, hey, I could at any point just go on TikTok instead. TikTok is way more fun than doing the work that you're supposed to do. So put it in a different room, put on a timer if you want to, 25 minutes, you can go check on it then, that's the reward, but then you come back and you do the thing that you're supposed to be doing. Okay, step number 6, you're all gonna roll your eyes and you're gonna hate me. Meditation. I know. There's a really important study that was done in 2015 by Modesto Lowe et al. What's really important about the study is that they looked specifically at ADHDers, and they asked participants to engage in a 17-minute mindfulness meditation practice where they focused on their breath. So essentially what you can do is you can pay attention to the breath rising up from the top of your head and then flowing all the way through down to the bottom of your feet, and you pay attention to how that breath as you breathe in is flowing through your entire body. Now, I know that 17 minutes is a long time, but that was what they did in the study. But what's really important is that in one single 17-minute meditation practice, they saw improved plasticity in the frontal cortex of individuals with ADHD. I don't know if you guys understand how important that is, but the fact that they only looked at ADHDers is really important to me. And the fact that they showed plasticity in the frontal cortex in one 17-minute session alone is wild. So I know that you're probably thinking, I can't focus, but the more you practice it, meditation and neurotypicals and neurodivergence show that we improve the connectivity in the frontal cortex so that we can be better at sustaining attention. So you might be thinking 17 minutes is a long time. Yes, it is. It is long even for me. So you could start with 5, you could start with 10, you can start with 17. I personally am a partner of Open, so I will drop the 30-day pass in the caption. You can use my 30-day pass and you can try it. It is one of the best apps on this planet when it comes to breathwork and meditation. I definitely encourage you to try it. It is thebomb.com. There is research to show that caffeine in conjunction with L-theanine, predominantly around 200 milligrams of L-theanine. You can also get L-theanine in matcha, so if you drink matcha, you don't need to add any extra L-theanine. But L-theanine is an amino acid that's found in tea that essentially helps you to mitigate some of the anxiousness that comes with caffeine. So there's a lot of research to show that the two in combination, or you just drink matcha alone, or a type of tea that has that conjunction already, can help you to raise your levels of attention without that anxiety. So you could try those two together, and I'd love to hear in the comments what your thoughts are. As always, please always check with a physician before you try any supplements, especially if you are on medication. And then last but not least, omega-3. So we've seen that omega-3 has modulatory effects on our brain's ability to become more plastic. We have seen that omega-3 has the ability to modulate some of the symptoms that individuals with ADHD suffer from. So EPA and DHA are two important fatty acids that are found in omega-3. And what you want is you want a closest as possible 1-to-1 ratio of each. A lot of brands may not have that, so you want to find something that has at least a minimum 1,000 milligram dosage of EPA and around 800 of DHA. The more the merrier, in the sense that if you can get a 1-to-1 ratio, that's great, but that is your minimum requirement. So 1,000 milligrams of EPA, 800 milligrams of DHA, and that helps to modulate some symptoms. And I would encourage everyone to actually take the supplement. It helps with depression. Your brain is made up of DHA, and so it is a fatty acid that is required for general brain health. Guys, I hope that you found this helpful. If you have any questions, as always, please drop them in the comments section. I would love to hear from you, and I really hope that this helps to amplify your life. It's me, Nick, your pocket neuroscientist. Please like, comment, and subscribe my Rewire Collective. You will help me bring this channel to the stratosphere and beyond.